Did you ever take anything out, Russell, because you thought it was too scary? Or, I mean, on the scare factor, you thought, actually, that's maybe too much?
No, only the smallest thing ever was a sound effect. Actually, it was in one of Stephen's. Actually, someone was transforming into one of those gas mask creatures, and the sound effect of the skull cracking was a bit strong. We tend to sort of look at it very carefully before it's shot. Like there's more or less a complete ban on blood, because I think that's taking a step into a different genre. That's becoming true horror and gore. But yeah, it had the odd moment if someone's shot. So literally we sit around tables like this discussing endlessly exactly how much blood there should be if someone's shot. And it's always a very small amount, because that's not impressive. It's not. And at the same time, it's not. I've always made it's not clever. And it's not impressive to frighten kids out of their wits. A healthy, brilliant, fun scare, like a statue coming alive, is a brilliant thing. Terror is not admirable, and we're not out to do that to an audience. Yes. We're not out to drive them away. So it's a responsible job, and I think we've handled that well.
Yes, because that's when we discuss. I haven't looked at the emails which have been coming in, but I suspect it'll be those. It's the psychological moments are the ones that really, really stay with people. The blood, I can deal with the blood, can deal with that, but you're right. Obviously, it's a tea time audience, so you need to think about
it's
that.
The same with adult horror, really. I think Psycho's more scary than a Saw film or something. All those awful blood-drenched things. I think psychological is always more scary.
What's the scariest moment, Ben, as far as you're concerned, as someone who's written and observed and been quite close?
I think from the last series there was an episode which was almost entirely one scene for the 45 minutes, just on one set. And it's exactly what you were saying. We never saw the monster. There was just sort of knocking on the out. It was set in a space bus. And Leslie Sharp was in it. And she
came in and talked about it. Yeah,
of course, yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for mentioning
that was just psychological terror. That wasn't. You didn't see the monster. You didn't see any goo or gore or blood. It was just.
That was a piece of theatre, Russell.
It was. The cast themselves said you could have put down stage in 45 minutes, and what a piece of acting from her and from David. They loved that. The entire cast really. They actually shot that whole thing in order as well. So every day they do another 5 minutes of it until the whole thing built up a real head of steam.
And did that just emerge fully formed in your head, or did you think
it did? That came
slightly differently.
That wasn't planned. That was meant to be someone else's. Actually, in the book, that was meant to be someone else's script, and some other poor writer had their script chucked out with 3 days to go before pre-production started, because I had this idea in my head and I knew I was leaving. And I thought, well, if I'm leaving, I'll never get to write this. And so I gave myself the weekend to write it. I said, if I can get this done in 3 days, it'll work, and I'll replace that script. And I'm glad I did.
It was incredible to be sent that each evening, because it was just about 3-4 days, whole 45-minute episode. Incredible pace.
And could you tell at that early stage, just looking at those early emails, that this was going to be one of the most memorable episodes, Benjamin?
Yeah, because it was different. It was something. And that's the great thing about Doctor Who. You can do the odd episode, which is just completely different. But we weren't sure, even a few days before transmission, nobody was sure whether it would entirely work. Because would kids sit through 45 minutes on one set with just one group of actors?
Could you done that live?
Well, that's
what David said. David suggested that.
That's talked about sometimes. People give us do a live episode, and I'm very scared.
But that's the only kind of. It would have to be a show like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. They did the Bill live, and they had motorcycle crashes and explosions, and people falling off roofs on it. People go a bit mad with live episodes, and I can't help thinking. And I don't mean to be offensive to old Doctor Who, but it would end up looking like old Doctor Who in a way if you did it.
And actually, it's an excitement for those involved, but actually, if you're sitting at home, so what?
Do you know, that's true, because they had that whole rash of live Coronation Street live bills, and then they sort of died out, because it was, I know the production teams were buzzing on it, and you weren't necessarily at home.
We'll talk more Doctor Who in just a moment. The book is The Writer's Tale. It's emails between Russell T. Davies and Benjamin Cook, lots of script and photographs. We'll talk more on this in just a moment. Get to your emails and texts as well. It's 2:17. Louise has got some travel, then more Who in just a second.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'm pleased to say there are no reported incidents or accidents on the motorway now.
The Writer's Tale has been written by Russell T. Davies and Benjamin Cook, and they're here sort of like an adult Doctor Who annual.
That's a nice description, yeah.
Is that the best way to look at it? Very early on, we get a reference to Christmas 2008 with the thought that the Cybermen rise from the dead.
It's on its way.
This has been talked about for some while then.
Yes, it's called The Next Doctor. We hope it'll go out on Christmas Day. You can't guarantee that, knowing what the BBC are like, but that's the plan. Starring David Morrissey, as the next Doctor, and David Tennant, obviously, as the Doctor, and
Hang on, right? Okay, you need to before we get and there's a photograph of Dave Morrissey. Hello, Dave, if you're listening, in here, looking very beautiful, and he's the next Doctor. You're saying?
Well,
good luck with that line of questioning.
He's really surprised that we're down here, and he might be completely defenceless against my ruthless.
Should have got him drunk
I
first.
could just let slip, but you'll have to watch on Christmas Day. How can there be a next Doctor? How can the Doctor be meeting the next Doctor, or a next Doctor, or a future Doctor? Is that possible? Can it be? And just see these two actors together is brilliant. It's really brilliant.
Of course, they work together in Blackpool.
Yeah, they're good old mates.
Yeah.
After that,
But I mean, I'm not giving anything away because it's in the book.
No,
David Morrissey arrives, and David Tennant says, "Who are you?"
Who are
And
you? He says,
"I'm the Doctor."
He takes out a sonic screwdriver and he says, "I'm the Doctor," and that is like the first 2 minutes, and then it's all action.
That's great,
after
isn't
that.
it? Straight away.
Yeah, add the Cybermen to that, and it's like, the Christmas ones are nice and big and blousy.
So does that mean that just for this programme, that when we're talking about people who've played the Doctor, that David Morrissey could actually say, "Well, I was as well"?
It could be, yes. He could
can.
probably charge royalties for the past 45 years or something if he wants to.
Right. And did you think he could do it again?
Do you think
More
David
often?
Morrissey could do it again? The option's there. It's open. We'll have to see. We'll have to see whether he survives.
Have
till
you
the
seen
end.
it? What have you seen in this?
I have seen an early edit, yes.
What do you reckon?
I think it's brilliant. But the man who wrote it sat right next to me, so I wouldn't say that, but it is. No, it's really good.
Which is the best bit?
It's a spectacular ending. You haven't seen the end of
About 17 minutes in.
Oh,
really
right.
good.
Oh,
really
that's-
good.
Well, that's always 17 minutes in. There's always something exciting.
Exactly.
Do you ever have alternative endings in mind, Russell?
Usually I know the ending first, actually. I'm sort of heading towards the ending, even though that changes as it goes along. I'm very rarely stuck. I'm just about to start writing the specials, actually. And I was describing to Ben the other day that I know exactly where my last one ends, down to the last line. So it's funny, that tends to slot into place
So
first.
your very last special, right at the conclusion, you know how it's going to finish.
Yes, I know,
It's
absolutely.
like J.K. Rowling having finished the last chapter of
It
the
is.
last Harry Potter book before she'd started the second.
Well, I completely believe her when she says all that stuff. Well, I've read it and I love that chapter, but and I think you don't have to write that way. I hate talking as a writer and saying you must write like this. If some people just make it up and find the endings they go along, but I do tend to need it as almost like a rope to pull yourself through the actual writing process. You know where you're heading.
Right, some listeners' comments here, and there are lots of them. Here's this from Colin. Simon, as someone who grew up with classic Doctor Who series in the 60s, I'd like to ask Russell one question. Why do the Cybermen speak like actors, stuffed inside cybersuits, rather than the chilling electronic sound they made back in the 60s? For example, the Tomb of the Cybermen or the Moonbase story. The Cybermen were mimicked in the playgrounds when I was a kid, and while the current crop still looks soulless and scary, the voice doesn't generate any of the fear that the original Cybermen did.
Well, Colin, I think the voices in the Doom of the Cybermen are ridiculous. To be honest,
They're
inaudible.
They are.
And I'm of an age that grew up with them myself as well. And actually, you do get kids stomping around the playground saying delete, like Cybermen do. So I refute every word, kind listener.
So you couldn't hear what they were saying, really? Is that...
You had to concentrate to understand what they were.
Wanted to go to
They weren't the best.
What did they sound like?
They were very like that. I'm doing a Cyberman voice on the radio now. They're very high pitched and babbly and interesting. It worked in its day. It absolutely worked in its day. You'd sort of be laughed off screen with that now.
Colin does conclude, please congratulate Russell on taking Doctor Who back to being the great series which it was in the classic era.
Thank you.
And it's only a few years, but there were many people who thought this was unsavable, this program. Just restating the basics, you have completely changed the way Saturday night feels on television.
It's weird, isn't it? You've got your Merlins and Robin Hoods and stuff like that. It is funny looking back at how many doubters there were, and you forget as the years go by. And we've had people again every year. People keep on expecting it to fail. If you look at certain snotty newspapers and things, they're always waiting for us to fall off air, and we've actually got more and more successful. But it's a joy. Literally, as a fan of the old show all my life, it's just a joy to see it succeeding like this. It always should have been.
It's going to be difficult to let it go, though, isn't it?
Do you know? No, because I can go back to watching it. I haven't seen a brand new episode of Doctor Who, of a series, for 21 years. That's how long it's been. It's going to be brilliant. Imagine me on a Saturday. That's where you should have the cameras come round to mine, and I'll be exploding with joy watching it.